Awesome is an adjective used to describe everything from the latest trending YouTube video to life-changing moments. But some ideas are simply just, well, awesome. This week on Full Frame, the awesome episode. I'm Mike Walter, coming to you from the heart of New York City's vibrant Times Square. Let's take it full frame. Our next guests are self-described guerrilla philanthropists. They've seen firsthand how small ideas can have a big impact. In fact, that's at the core of the Awesome Foundation's work. Their unique nonprofit distributes microgrants because they believe small ideas keep the world moving. So by providing resources, leverage, and recognition, they're turning everyday people into citizen problem solvers. Each month, 10 lucky recipients are given $1,000. Their ideas range from the scientific to the sublime. Because the awards are relatively small, the Awesome Foundation can take more risks and adapt more easily, month by month, chapter by chapter. Wondering who's behind all this awesomeness, how they got here, and where they're going? Me too. Joining us to answer these pressing questions and more, we welcome Awesome Foundation New York's founding trustee and dean, Jesse Chan Norris. New York chapter co-founder, Lee Sean Wong, and Chancellor of the Institute on Higher Awesome Studies, Christina Shi. Welcome to Full Frame. Christina, obviously I should start with you with such an august title. Is there a fight over these titles, or do you just come up with them? I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself.
Yeah, no one really wants to be in charge, so not so much a fight.
It's funny, guys, I'll get to you in just a second. The ladies first. Christina, I saw your talk at the TEDx in Boston. And it's just simply stated, it's just hilarity, people laughing uproariously, and you kind of get the sense that maybe this is silly, but I think silly is probably the wrong word. The word you use is fun. There's a lot of fun involved, so talk to us about that.
Sure. I first got involved with the Awesome Foundation while I was working with one foot in the nonprofit world, and I'd gotten a little frustrated with how fast people burn out and how everything was just taken so seriously because people were in perpetual crisis mode, that there wasn't really time to think more innovatively or have fun with the ideas. So Awesome Foundation really appealed to me as a way to get away from that and let people actually have fun with giving, which is what makes it a more sustainable way to give.
And would you guys agree? I mean, is that pretty much what drew you in as well, Jesse?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember in New York from, I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s, when I moved to the city, where lots of fun things were happening. People were doing things just because they were fun. They weren't on social media. And the Awesome Foundation, I don't know, had this sense of, I like to call it, I think fun is right, but I also like to think of it as whimsy and adding a bit of whimsy back into the city that is so focused on, real estate and startups and that kind of thing.
Would you agree? I mean, do you have to be young and with it? I mean, can I join, or?
Definitely.
You look stunned at the question, like, maybe not, but I'll try and finesse this.
We welcome trustees of all ages, so we have people from recent grads from college to people in their 60s and beyond. And part of Awesome Foundation is also sort of openness and accessibility, right? That anybody with 9 other friends could start their own chapter in their own city, their own town, around any other theme. We were really trying to fill this gap about how everyone could be sort of a sponsor, a patron of the arts and of awesome things.
And the interesting thing is talking to you earlier, I mean, everybody's their own entity. I mean, it's like herding kittens, as you guys describe it. I mean, every chapter's different, how they do things. It seems very, very loose, fluid.
I think it is fluid, and I think that that's sort of because it's, we're from the New York chapter, and so New York has its own flavor, but every chapter has its own flavor. Every chapter, we organize our chapters geographically, or for the most part, and that actually helps keep things closer to home, keeps things smaller, keeps the impact greater. So $1,000 on a global scale might make a difference, it might not. $1,000 on a local scale can actually make a big difference to somebody.
And you know what's interesting? You mentioned burnout, but the other thing, people think of philanthropy, they think of stuffy and just kind of and kind of very organized, and these galas, and we've got to get in our tuxedos and stuff. And your galas are a little bit more simplistic, I've heard. Is that another part of this? Is breaking those chains and saying, hey, anybody can get involved, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be so structured.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the Awesome Foundation started in Boston back in 2009, the impetus was really that, it was, you could get a $10,000 grant or a $100,000 grant, but if you just wanted $1,000 to do something small, to prototype an idea or to start, just exploring something that you wanted to do, it was actually just as hard to get $1,000 as it was to get $100,000. You had to go through, maybe harder, you had to go through the whole grant process, and it would take a really long time, and we saw artist friends who basically just gave up on their ideas because the process took too long. And so the original design inspiration was, how can you do this in a way that's super lightweight? You don't have to clear it with anyone. It's really just people getting together for the price of, I think the original pitch was, for the price of like 10 to 15 burritos. What can you give to the community to let somebody else make something awesome happen?
Right. Well, like Christina, I worked in traditional philanthropy and nonprofits as well, and kind of with traditional foundations, they're spending 6 figures to give away 7, or spending 7 to give away 8. And for a $1,000 micro grant, we're not going to be doing sort of report backs about impact assessment or about really deep kind of due diligence, because $1,000 is just a way to learn and to experiment. In the 5 years we've been doing this, we've only had one project not work out, and the guy actually gave back the rest of the money. So,
wow.
There's that sort of social trust there too, where we don't have to do a lot of due diligence because we make it a public thing, and people know that, if they're not going to execute, they can give the money back, or they can talk about it and sort of have that relationship rather than this sort of formality.
Well, and you're making some really interesting points. It just seems so layered too, and complex and difficult. If I'm like, I got this fantastic idea, I just need $1,000. How many layers do I have to go through to get to the 3 of you and have you sign off and say it's a great idea, go up for it?
We have a 3-question application. So it's
That's so many layers.
A lot of layers. It's it's like a 10-minute application, right? It's who are you, what's your idea, and how are you going to use the money? And we basically leave it at that. We have an additional question on the New York chapters, which is really what makes this awesome. Just to make people really think about how we say awesome, and it's sort of whimsical and fun, but we really do think, like, we have conversations at our meetings sometimes where we say, well, is this really capital A awesome for New York City? But that's it. And then the application comes in, we review them all once a month as a group, and then we choose one.
And Christina, I know that you were involved in the one where the guy, I love this, the guy has the shoe phone, which I think was on like Get Smart or one of those shows, so it's like maybe it's been done before. But didn't you folks go back to him and say, hey, come up with something else? I like this, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, so this guy, Paul from Australia, this was back when Awesome Foundation only really had a handful of chapters. And when it first started, it wasn't Awesome Foundation Boston, it was just the Awesome Foundation. There was really no plan that it would expand internationally. So the Boston chapter, as a result, just takes grant applications from all over the world. And this guy from Australia submitted a pretty great project where he really wanted to build a phone into a shoe, like in the spy movies. And have it be functional, and it got very, very close to winning for that month, but it just didn't quite have something. He had already built the phone shoe, and so we thought, what really difference is our money going to make in this project? But we liked it so much, we reached out to him and said, hey, you should come back with something else if you have like any new ideas. And so he came back and said, I want to build a distributed mesh network for phones to be able to work when there's no cell phone reception offline in the case of crises or super rural areas. And we were like, oh, okay, yeah, that's quite different from the shoe phone, but we'll take it, And so we ended up giving him the grant, and I love this to this day. On his website, he has a section called Grants, and it says, the Awesome Foundation for the Arts and Sciences, which is what we jokingly called ourselves in the beginning, $1,000. And then the next grant application, the next grant he got was for, I think, $250,000 or something like that. So, we really helped him up his game in that situation, I think.
Still got top billing, though. That's the great thing.
That's true, yeah. It's chronological.
It's in alphabetical order, right?
So talk to me about that global footprint, though. I mean, it's really kind of gone, I guess viral is the key word everybody says these days, but I mean, it really has kind of spread, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have 70 chapters around the world right now. And they're all self-organized. Somebody will hear about it. Hopefully, somebody will hear about this. Hear about the Awesome Foundation now and say, "I want to start this in my community." They'll get together 9 of their friends, and then we'll get an email from somebody saying, "Hey, by the way, I just started a chapter. What do I do?"
Yeah.
And then it'll get going.
Yeah, Christina and I, a couple years back, were both in Brazil for work in Rio, and we just hosted a dinner, invited our local Brazilian friends, and told them about Awesome Foundation, and they've had a chapter in Rio ever since.
Wow.
And 2 weeks ago, I was in Brussels for work, so I was talking about Awesome Foundation with people in Europe. I was in Kigali in Rwanda last week, and I was also telling people there about Awesome. And the idea is it's so simple that anybody could just get a group of friends together and start a chapter. So we're just spreading the word.
I don't know. I don't want to tell you guys what to do, but I think International Godlike Ambassador would be a good title for him, right? I guess you got these great titles.
The Ambassador of Awesome.
Ambassador of Awesome. What are some of the ideas that have come up that you have a particular fondness of? And I get the sense you've already described one, so I'll start with you. Is there one that really kind of like, wow, this is really pretty incredible?
We get asked this a lot, and it's sort of like choosing between your children, which one's your favorite. But I think
I'm going to make you do that.
I'm going to choose the Firstborn, which was the very first grant that we gave in New York, which is 2010, 2011, and it was a project called the BioBus, which is this biodiesel-powered school bus that has a science lab on board. So they go to schools where they don't have their own science labs and teach about life sciences. But the awesome part about that is not just the bus and the biodiesel, but this guy wanted to build a laser-powered tweezer. So using the laser, you can point at microorganisms like your amoebas and things like that, and it would actually sort of freeze them in place so you could look at it in a microscope. It's just awesome, right? There's lasers, there's science, there's kids, there's education, and it was really the first one, so I think it's one of the most memorable and sort of emotionally kind of touching because it was the first grant we gave.
How about you, Jesse?
I am particularly fond of the laser tweezers just because we got to put laser on our website as our coming out party. I am particularly fond of one of our most recent grants, which is the Sandwich Club Summit. It sounds, from what we can tell, like the Awesome Foundation for Sandwiches. It's a group of people that really love sandwiches and love it so much that they're going to have a summit where people can get together and listen to talks from people about sandwiches and their love of sandwiches and debate sandwiches.
And a whole sort of ontology of sandwiches,
absolutely.
too, right? Like, is a burrito a sandwich?
Right, exactly.
Right, is an open-faced sandwich a sandwich when there's only one piece of bread?
Exactly. And so, and we ended up talking about this project a lot.
Over sandwiches?
Thai food, I think.
Over Thai food, I think. Yeah, it was sort of it should have been sandwiches.
We didn't know.
We didn't know yet. And then, in the end, we were really excited about this project. We need to give them a grant.
So give me an idea, how much money has been distributed, how many grants, and then also the footprint of the Awesome Foundation. I mean, it's cool what it is, but I mean, obviously you can see as long as he's traveling, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. So give me kind of that whole kind of structural element. I mean, what kind of money are we talking about overall, and how many grants?
I mean, to this point, we've given away 1,600 grants between all of our chapters, and that's, because it's $1,000, approximately $1,000 each. It's about $1.6 million over the last 5 years.
And then as you grow, I mean, where do you see this? And I'll start with you, Jesse, and we'll go down the line, and we'll make it quick. But where do you see the Awesome Foundation maybe 5-10 years from now?
Hopefully a chapter everywhere I might ever want to visit.
That's fair enough. Christina?
I'd love to see Awesome Foundations at schools and at organizations just as a mechanism for getting people together and having fun while giving money away, less based on the geographic chapter model.
And I can almost predict what you're going to say. Everywhere you travel, there's going to be a chapter, right?
Well, like Jesse, I'd also like to see awesome everywhere, but also see how we can be thought leaders in traditional philanthropy as well. So we actually have a chapter that's called Awesome Without Borders. That's a program in an existing family foundation, and they actually give $1,000 out every week. But we'd also like to see how traditional foundations can look at this awesome model of smaller grants as ways to learn. So I actually talked to somebody who works for the U.S. government, and are there ways to bring sort of more awesome foundation-like kind of grant giving to small projects, which is different from their traditional grant making.
Wow, could change everything.
Yeah.
Thank you, all three of you. It's been a great fun. Really appreciate it. Keep being awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, how about an awesome act of kindness? Let me state the obvious. You're watching television, but did you ever think watching TV could change your life in a big way? Our next guest, Alex Radulich, is living proof that it can happen. In the spring of 2012, he was watching a movie on TV, and the college student says, one line from that movie changed his life forever. One of the characters said, the way to change the world was through one random act of kindness at a time. That line hit Alex like a ton of bricks and sparked his passion for helping others. The result is this awesome experiment.
We are on our way to Mission Beach. We have this little project that we thought of. It says take what you need, give what you can. We're going to tack a whole bunch of $1 bills on it, and hopefully, I don't know, we all have different ideas of what's about to happen.
So save us. We can sow with love in the morning, feed your soul with love till the evening, expand your soul with love on the weekend, cause love is all I got. We can sow with love in the morning, feed your soul with love in the evening, expand your soul with love on the weekend, cause love is all I got. So we can sow with love in the morning, feed your soul with love in the evening, expand your soul with love on the weekend, cause love is all I got.
This is going a lot differently than we imagined, which is cool, but hopefully someone comes along who could use a few bucks and takes it. So that's why it's here.
I'm pretty poor myself. If I was rich, I'd be putting a $100 bill up there to see what the reaction would be. I mean, I'm rich mentally, but I'm not rich physically.
16, 17, 18. Hey man, here's rent, brother. All you gotta do is love people and have good conversations, man.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, man, give me a hug, brother.
Right.
ARC Project Now stands for Acts of Random Kindness. Alex says it's not just a nonprofit, it's a movement. The group's mission is to prove simple acts of kindness and compassion can make a difference. And it can also bring about change. Alex Radulich is here with us now. Alex, welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love that video because he's kind of like, what? Like, it probably shocks people when you come along and do something like that.
It shocked all of us. Like, we're not expecting that video to even be made. It was just like, we had no money on this trip, and we figured, you know, we can put $20 to see what happens. And that guy came up to us afterwards, probably like 2.5 hours in. We thought it would last, 10 minutes because we're putting money out in the open and it says, take what you need. But he came up 2.5 hours in and he just started talking with us, like wondering what's going on, and we were pretending we didn't know what was going on. And he just had a really good conversation with us, and he was like, is it okay if I go grab money? And we're like, yeah, what do you need it for? He's like, it's to pay an electric bill. So we went up, grabbed a bunch of money off, helped him pay his electric bill, and it blew his mind. It blew all of our minds.
Let's take, we've kind of jumped ahead. Let's take a step back. 2012, you're watching this movie. Tell us about this experience, because I've seen that movie. I wasn't all that inspired by it, but it inspired you.
Yeah, I mean, I often say it's the cheesiest movie to get inspired by. But it was really, I think it hit me at a season in my life where I was just not happy with college. I knew I wasn't there for the right reasons. And that line spoke to my heart more than anything ever has. So almost immediately when I got home, I made a video just explaining to my friends, if they see me go out of my way to help somebody or to open the door, that video explains why.
Well, stop right there, because we have that video. Let's watch it.
All right.
And I thought immediately, I need to fund this whole project. I was like, how can I do this? I thought I'm overblessed. I'm gonna sell my Xbox 360 and all my games. Came up with $250 from that. Gave the guy a great deal, by the way. And I told one of my friends about it, and I prayed about it a little bit. And the next day, my friend gave me this thing. It says to bless someone else. He gave me $200. In 3 days, I came up with just around $500 for this project. $500 that I'm just gonna spend on someone else or multiple people. I also made these cards right here. Pretty much I'll do the act of random kindness, give them the card, talk to them, and see if they pay it forward. I'll give them 2 cards. Exponential growth right there. They'll give it to someone, that someone will give it to someone. It's just gonna be a whole crap load of kindness.
It's worth noting, Alex has been so busy he hasn't even changed his sweater. He's still wearing the same sweater as he did in that. You were the one that noticed that while we were watching it. And you also mentioned you hate that video now, but that video touched the nerve in others. Talk to us about what happened after you made it.
Yeah, so I mean, I made that video, posted it on my Facebook, and just through the power of the internet, I was contacted from people in Brazil, Russia, Canada, and United States within the first 24 hours. So that immediately put the thought in my head, like, there's other people that want to help create this community of just kindness. That's the first time I've seen that video in a good 2.5 years, and I'm just like, there's so much more to that story. I love it.
So, overwhelmed at the reaction, or did you kind of expect, I'm going to touch a nerve?
I did not expect that. I honestly just thought I'd post it and like my best friends would watch it, and it wouldn't be this viral over the night kind of thing.
So now it's one thing to come up with this great idea, it's another thing you put it out there, and then when it's fully embraced as it was, now you have to get to work. You haven't probably thought it that far ahead of it, had you? Or
no.
So then what do you do next?
So the first big thing that happened was me and my best friend Dalton, he hopped on board right away, and he's helped lead this thing to become what it is right now. We wanted to take a road trip for spring break. We thought, let's branch off America into 2 cities, flip a coin. If it lands on heads or tails, we'll go to that city, do an act of kindness, and then flip the coin again and keep going. So people would be like, so where are you guys ending up? And we're like, we have no idea. We're either going west or east, and we'll figure it out on the way. That led to the next spring break. We did the same thing. And then I'm just blessed to have the right people in my life that challenge me to think further and dream bigger. And we were asking for our best friends to come on board. We sat his whole family down, had this whole PowerPoint presentation, and apparently it wasn't clear because at the end of it, the parents are like, do you want money? And we're like, we need your sons to be on board with us. And then the dad was like, why don't you guys buy an RV? And we're like, because we don't have money. And then, I don't know, we're kind of creative people, and we came up with this idea to sell ad space on the side, and then we purchased our first RV. It was like a catch-22 moment, but it worked out. And then that summer we hit the road 6,000 miles for 6 weeks and just made a huge splash.
So talk to me about the splash. You know, one of the things that I think is great about what you do is that you really have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, you're just going to go out there, you're going to do this. And so I know you know this is going to be fantastic, but you don't know to what degree. So as you're on this path, you know, and I imagine after each day, you're probably sitting there talking to your buddies going, wow, that was amazing. What were the things that were happening?
Man, that's very true. We had no idea what to expect. It's hard to raise funds for something where you're just saying like, you know, it's going to be really awesome, I promise. I have no idea what's going to happen. But we secured funding for that first year and just hit the road with really no plans. We had a couple like bigger things like shopping sprees and stuff planned out beforehand. But those bigger things just got us in the media. And then after that, it was like we all realized the smaller random acts that were happening just in some random Walmart parking lot had such an effect on our hearts, and just, I don't know, it's addicting, kindness. I never thought of it that way, but it became addicting to be like, all right, let's put our phones down and just be 100% aware of what's around us.
Is it hard though? I mean, it's great what you're doing, but is it ever hard where you walk away and you're like, this is almost like Cinderella though, and you know, like we gave them that one shining moment, but Or is it enough to change, to intercede in somebody's life, have that special moment, and maybe 5-10 years from now it has this overall impact on them?
The hard part, or at least the part I struggle with, is just at the end of the day and letting some doubt set in my mind, is this really worth it? You know, all I did today was buy somebody else's groceries. But you know, every once in a while you'll get a story back of how much that really meant to them, because you never know what somebody's going through.
If you were to talk to somebody out there, just randomly, just run into somebody, and they were to say, you know, I don't know, I just don't have very much money, I don't have, what would you tell them is, you know, I guess the higher the risk, the higher the return, all of that sort of stuff. But in a sense, you get back as much as you give in, even more so, I would think.
You really do. It affects you in a deep way. It does. I would tell that person a smile goes a really long way. I can't tell you how many times I've had a bad day walking down a hallway and somebody smiles at me and I'm just like, you know what, everything's going to be okay.
If somebody's watching this and they want to contribute money, here's another piece that they probably aren't aware of. You're not really looking for that, are you?
We're not. No, we're trying to solely rely on corporate sponsors. We're kind of lining those up as we go. But we're making it very difficult for the general public to donate to us. We'd rather have people take that money and go out and actually try an act of kindness rather than just give us money to do it ourselves.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us, Alex. It's great what you're doing, and keep it up. Really appreciate it. Alex's story, of course, proves the kindness of strangers can result in a life-changing event. Angel Flight West is a nonprofit organization that is taking that philosophy in the great blue skies. The volunteer-driven organization arranges free, non-emergency air travel for children and adults with serious medical conditions and other compelling needs. Its network of more than 1,400 pilots donate everything to help families in need. That way, they can receive vital medical treatment that may otherwise be out of reach. Full-frame contributor Sandra Hughes went along for a ride to find out more about the awesome work of these real-life angels with wings.
Clutching a bouquet of roses and an anxious husband, breast cancer patient Leanne Brill is heading home to Las Vegas from California, courtesy of her flying angel, Jack Lohman. Leanne's cancer treatment has taken place at the University of California Irvine Medical Center, about 433 kilometers away from her home. The trip back and forth was originally a daunting task for her and her husband.
I was due to have chemo once a week for 12 weeks. My husband's a pharmacist. He would work 12, 14-hour days. He would get home about 10 o'clock at night. And we would pack the car up, leave about 11 p.m. and drive, so we'd get here maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, and for my 8 a.m. chemo the next morning, stay overnight Wednesday night, and then drive back Thursday morning. And we did that for 2 weeks, and it was exhausting.
Seeing how tired the couple was, the medical center told the Brills about a better way to make the trip, by air.
By the next week, we had an angel flying us, and they've flown us ever since through 12 weeks of chemo. Then I had a mastectomy on September 1st. Then I had 3 more rounds of chemo every 2 weeks. And then November 23rd, I started radiation.
Those angels of the air are part of a volunteer force of pilots coordinated by Angel Flight West, a charitable organization started 33 years ago by a dozen pilots at the Santa Monica, California airport.
So what could we do with our love and passion for aviation that goes beyond just drilling holes in the sky? And they said, well, you know, I'm sure hospitals could use us.
And use them they did.
And since then we've done 66,000 flights for over 33 years. We're flying about 4,000 flights a year.
Jack Lohman is one of the air angels. Like many of the pilots, his life has been touched by tragedy. His first wife died of ovarian cancer. But Lohman still considers his life blessed, and because of that, he wanted to give back.
Everyone's today according to your schedule. We should be on the back.
Now he flies with a purpose.
And I see this as a great opportunity to be able to do some good and at the same time enjoy something I like to do, which is, of course, flying.
Today, the Brills are nestled in Jack's plane for a short 1-hour flight.
Heading home today after 9 weeks of radiation at UCI. So I'm very excited to be going home.
Angel Flight pilots in Canada, Australia, and across the U.S. make daily trips flying patients to treatment, bringing family members to sick loved ones, even relocating abused spouses or people after natural disasters. And it's completely free.
Angel Flight West is just one of such organizations in the U.S. There are many more in other regions of the country, and in total they donate about 10,000 flights a year.
We do have some requirements to fly on the planes. The patient has to be medically stable and ambulatory, so they need to be able to get on and off the aircraft on their own and not need medical assistance on the flight. There does need to be some sort of financial need or other compelling reasons. Some people are immunocompromised and can't do the whole commercial airport thing. Our limitation in terms of distance for our private planes are 1,000 miles. And then we have commercial airline partners like Alaska Airlines that fly within Alaska routes, specifically Alaska residents. We fly a lot within Alaska and in and out of Alaska.
And then you've got to go back.
Back at Angel Flight West headquarters, volunteers and staff serve as air traffic control for patients and their families.
If you really think about it, we're larger than some small airlines, and our coordinators are amazing. They have to wear different hats, and you're talking to a patient one day, and then the next hour you're talking to a social worker, the next hour you're talking to a pilot, and you have to try to fit all those pieces together. It's a little bit of like puzzle building, if you will.
Leanne and Michael count 20 flights with their Air Angels, different pilots through the different stages of her cancer.
I could never have done it without Angel Flight, not just for myself, but also for my husband, because obviously it was very stressful for him, too.
Leanne is winning the fight for her life, a battle that was made just a bit easier with the help provided by Angel Flight.
Some of our passengers and pilots form lifelong relationships because when you're in a cockpit with someone for hours at a time, you get to know them really well. And our pilots are our biggest cheerleaders for patients that make it to recovery, and often are the most grieved when we lose someone.
On average, the pilots donate about $800 per flight in fuel and wear and tear on the plane. But the reward for their effort is priceless.
I'm home!
Home! For Full Frame, this is Sandra Hughes in Irvine, California.
Coming up next, what's on your bucket list? Our next guest wants to help you check some goals off the list. What are your goals in life? Where would you love to go exploring? Who do you want to take along to share that experience with? And what if you could keep track of all that information in one awesome place? That's where My Life Bucket comes in. It's a social networking site based on the concept of a bucket list. The goal is to help you define, share, and complete your life's goals. My Life Bucket website creator and entrepreneur is Ryan Corcoran, and he joins us now. Welcome to Full Frame, Ryan.
Thank you.
We'll get to that in just a minute. But when I think of bucket list, I think of the movie with Jack Nicholson, Morgan Freeman, a bunch of old codgers. You're a young guy. Why are you thinking about a bucket list so early in life?
Well, that is the thing. And it's funny you bring up the movie because I have actually not seen it, which is really ironic. But no, the concept of the bucket list has been very open, through a lot of people. And every now and then you hear people say, oh, it's on my bucket list and everything like that. But the concept of a bucket list was always a little bit morbid to me, right? You wait to the end of your life, you realize it's coming to an end, you make a list, and then it's like, I need to finish these things like right away.
Before I kick the bucket.
Exactly. So to me, that was always a little strange, and I've always been very goal-oriented myself. So I thought, we should be focusing on doing our goals now, not at the end, just the whole way through, which is kind of where the whole My Life Bucket came from, right? change it to a life bucket as opposed to a bucket list to kind of emphasize you should be doing it always.
And it's interesting, you know, you and I had a chance to chat a little bit before we started the broadcast, and you were talking about going to San Antonio and seeing this chalkboard. Tell us the story, because I think young people, and you know, I want to get inside your head and perhaps maybe some of your friends, young people today don't look at it as like, I've got to have a 30-year career, a 9 to 5, I got to get the silver watch, then I'm going to do all this travel and stuff. Life experiences are very important for young people even today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so tell us about this chalkboard that you saw.
So in San Antonio, I was staying at a hotel, and right across there was a parking garage. And on the parking garage there was this big slate, you know, chalkboard, and on it was written, things I want to do before I die. And there was probably, I don't know, 50 blank lines that people could pick up chalk and write down things they wanted to do. And every time I passed it, it was full, and it was of different things. So they were probably erasing this at least twice a day. And just normal foot traffic, people walking by and picking it up and writing it down. And there were some really beautiful things on there, like, you know, get married and, you know, find God or things like that. And then there were some questionable things, but we won't go into those.
What is it you think you're trying to inspire in users? I mean, if I go on this site, what do you think I can, as a user, that I can get that's going to benefit me?
So the benefits that you would get is really the ability to keep track of your goals, get accountability. That's the big thing, right? When you go on to, you know, do your goals and decide you want to do things, it helps when you have people looking at that and saying, hey, you know, you've announced this to the world, you know, now you need to do it, right? And My Life Bucket is very good at allowing you to also link your goals with your friends' goals, right? So if you wanted to go skydiving and I wanted to go skydiving, you know, it would say, hey, you know, you should go skydiving together.
It's interesting, though, but writing something down, it's a commitment that when it's just up here, it never has to really actually reach fruition. So it's a big step. So the commitment piece I totally get. And then the other piece that's really kind of nice about it, and is also important, is the cheerleader aspect. I mean, if you put the goal out there and you have a group that's going to encourage you, that's going to get you a lot closer to your goal, isn't it?
Right. And that's really the one of the underlying principles, is having the support system there to do that, and having your friends and your families and even people you just met, you know, through maybe another goal that you did, you know, to help each other and achieve all your dreams and aspirations through that portal. I have some friends who have goals that are very simple. You know, they don't need to be climb Mount Kilimanjaro or anything like that. You know, just like save $1,000. So I see these and I realize that not everything has to be these, you know, major mountains you need to climb. You know, it helps to have small goals, and I have some of those too. Like one of my goals that's in my focus is finish a resistance band program. So having it there just kind of motivates me to, you know, continue to be healthy and work out and things like that. So whether it's, you know, go to New Zealand or, you know, save $100 in the bank, doesn't matter. I mean, a goal is a goal. You need to get it out there so you can start working on it.
Well, that's a really good point, because whereas I think this goal may not be that important, really, in a way, if it's important enough for me to write it down, and it's important to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be important to you.
Right.
And you, as a cheerleader, you can still cheer me on, whether it's going to a concert or saving $100 or whatever. Let's jump in. I know you've got it right there. Why don't you grab it? Let's take a look at it and help our viewers get a better understanding. As you mentioned, one of the great things that you did was you showed it to folks. You got some really good input from the user standpoint. So walk us through. This is you.
Yes.
You're looking pretty stylish there with your sunglasses.
Thank you.
Seem pretty happy. So walk us through the interface. What are we looking at here?
So just on the home page here, and you have your notifications at the top. In the middle, you have the overview, which is kind of a breakout. So your goals, when you start adding them, you can list them into these categories that we call paths, right? Indicative of, you know, taking the journey through life, and, you know, there's different paths you can take. So you can see I've completed several in most of every category. And at the top, it might be a little hard to see, but there's I've completed 26 of 83 of my goals.
Wow.
So far. And, you know, I'm adding goals every day.
Well, you got to.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on the right there, you have the focus. And this is 5 goals that you're currently working on, right? And if we go into the focus, you see it's actually really easy to go through your goals. And if I wanted to remove one from my focus, maybe I want to put See the Northern Lights in there and save changes. Now I've added that to my focus, so it's there, it's in your face, so every time you log in, it's like, these are what you're working on, you should be reminded of that, right?
Right.
And I want to show you how easy it is just to add a goal. So if I go add a goal here, and I say be interviewed on a TV show.
Well, there you go.
So we can add that. Should look familiar.
Nicely done.
So I go save, and it automatically generates a goal page for you, where it's all now in a central location. So you can see there's priority. I can change that from doing soon to now or eventually. I made it public so my friends can see it and everybody. My description, the path it's under, I can place in my focus, and we have things like you can set target completion days, goal linking. I can link this to a friend, or I can ask people to contribute. So if you had an account, then you could actually be contributing to this goal. And then when I complete it, you get credit for it.
And coming up, you'll be able to superimpose your face over Angie Harmon because you've already done it. Here you are. Do you feel like down the road a piece you're going to hear from people who say, you know, I put these goals out there, and because every day I could get on and look at it, it was a stair step. It was a ladder to my success. I mean, is that what would be like the ultimate that you would hear 5 years from now from me run into somebody's website?
The ultimate. Well, I would always tell myself that when I started the project, as long as I could help one person achieve their goal, then the whole project would have been worth my while, right? So time, financially, and everything like that. And so far, I've already done that, right? And one of my goals on my life bucket is actually to be an inspiration. So to have somebody come up to me in 5 years and to say that I've inspired them to pursue their goals in some sort of way, shape, or form would be more than enough for me.
Was one of your goals in life to be an entrepreneur? I mean, or did you just kind of stumble into this, do you think?
So I'm an entrepreneur by blood. Both my parents have very successful businesses, and my sister as well. So she has a business as well. And growing up, I've always had some sort of business practice going on. I believe it was my freshman year of high school, I actually had my first LLC, which was a little company that I made with my friend to build custom computers and websites for people local. So I think it's definitely a mindset that you have to be in. So much later, I had another LLC, which was my umbrella company for all my production work. You know, both television and post-production stuff, which I also encompass my life bucket under as well. So I definitely think you can be made into an entrepreneur and you can be born one, and I was definitely born one.
Ryan, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with this week's Full Frame Close-Up. For most of us, puppets bring back memories of whimsical childhood stories. For the gifted artists at No Strings International, puppets are also a means for doing good. The masterminds behind the original Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock use puppets in the art of storytelling to help children cope in disaster situations. This is the premise of No Strings International, an organization that films puppets dealing with issues like HIV, war, and natural disasters. Their young audiences are then encouraged to interact with the puppets and explore the important messages that children encounter in those films. Their programs have helped kids in Madagascar, Sierra Leone, and refugees affected by the Syrian conflict, teaching them coping skills through the magic of whimsy and imagination.
art is really emotion. Art is the manifestation of the feeling. Art can touch where other things can't. And for kids, one of the things that we've always loved about puppetry is because it's so, even though it's a human form, it's abstracted. You know, it's not a person. It's these silly guys, right? But they're talking about really real feelings. And so when a cathartic moment happens in the story, the children feel it. That looked good, Rob. This is when Wassam starts his own. Yeah.
What we do is to do what are hopefully life-saving short films for kids around the world, kids at risk.
Ooh, we need to lighten up that shot a little bit.
And they're all based on the kind of work that we've all been doing all these many, many years in the worlds of television puppetry.
She seems to have found a friend.
Sarah will be our audience. The show must go on.
In many cultures where these films have gone, there has been a wonderful and extensive history of puppetry going way back as a very important art form. And what we have found in many cases is that there is a whole revival of interest in this as an art form. And of course, the wonderful thing about puppetry as an art form is that it encompasses all art forms. I actually started out in publishing, believe it or not. I was a children's book editor and designer, art director, illustrator, writer at Random House for many years, working with Dr. Seuss. And by chance, I happened upon a little project called Sesame Street just as it was beginning. And so I got in touch with the people there, and before very long, I found myself as the editor and art director of a series of Sesame Street books at Random House. And that in turn led me to meet Jim Henson, and he in turn asked me to come work with him at the Muppets. I spent probably a good quarter century or so working in that world, and continued to do that right up to and after Jim died. I finished up a few projects that he and I had been working on, and then something called 9/11 happened, and we began trying to think of how we might be able to use all of this experience and this expertise that we'd built up over all those decades to do something positive in the face of what we feared would be a truly negative reaction to that horror. The first project we did was for kids in Afghanistan because we felt that Afghanistan, of all places on the planet at that moment, really needed people to reach out.
You don't want to go to school.
I don't.
He does it?
No. While we certainly didn't change the course of history, we, I think, did manage to change the course of some lives for some kids, and that really was the impetus for No Strings and the work that it's been doing ever since. One of the most important things, I think, or the most important thing, is to really do some immersive study of whatever culture it is that we're addressing. And Kathy does most of the heavy lifting, and certainly in the cultural end of things and in the storytelling. And I delve into the visual side and do a lot of research, not only into how the people in these different areas live and work and look and dress today, but to get some historical perspective, so that as we do these projects, we try to reflect not just where people are now, but where they came from.
Once in a small village, in a time when real magic could still be found, two groups of people lived uneasily together.
When we leave a project, we want to leave no fingerprints. It should really feel like it is something that grew out of whatever culture we're working with.
How about you? What would you choose? Hmm?
Our next project coming up is a project from Madagascar, and it's dealing with nutrition and with land use. We're going to get people together in different groups and start spinning around ideas, and eventually we'll get there, and then we have to talk with people in the field.
And we're talking about the two films we're going to do. We're going to do one music video on nutrition.
Okay.
And that's probably going to be the shorter one. And then the story video is going to be about the environment. In Madagascar, they have one of the highest incidences of malnutrition and stunting, both mentally and physically, in the world. To have better access to diverse food, plant a vegetable garden, raise small animals, chickens, ducks, turkeys.
You know, you've got to be really delicate in how you couch these things. And
We
absolutely certain that there's no finger wagging, there's no, you've been bad by not doing this.
This is a bad thing you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my dear, I'm afraid you were right. You are pregnant. But that's not your only problem. You're also HIV positive. No.
We've done a series of short films for HIV/AIDS for Africa. Those films have been dubbed for about 7 countries in Africa. So it's in a lot of different languages. And they're talking about doing even more. Actually, our team, our UK team, our outreach workshop team, just came back from Freetown, Sierra Leone, where they were using one of our old films that we did for Haiti originally that talks about sanitation and public health and that sort of thing, and dubbed it into Creole, and it's now playing in Sierra Leone, where they have similar problems that they have in Haiti.
The outreach workshops are basically 2 parts. We have the curriculum that affects a certain country or a certain region, and with that we take the films that we shoot in New York that are applicable to a specific country, and we take the curriculum for that, and there's kind of a subject matter aspect of it that's more like a lecture talking portion. And then there's the puppetry aspect. We are basically teaching that and simple storytelling exercises to basically people who become trainers themselves and keep spreading out the techniques that we teach throughout their communities. And there are people who also work on a day-to-day basis with children. We do our training in the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week we go into a school, and our students become the teachers and work directly with children, and it is some of the most beautiful experiences I have ever had in my life, is getting to see them transfer their joy and passion to the kids and see the kids just light up.
When we talk to the children, we're talking to everybody. You know, it isn't always possible in the commercial world we live in to feel that the work we're doing resonates, you know, beyond that day's paycheck. Certainly it may artistically, but on a kind of larger level, is it always meaningful? And I do feel certainly the feeling that we get back from these amazing talents is a sense of gratitude that they are able to do something that has some larger meaning, some larger impact, and may, in fact, change a life or two. You know, the old saying that if you change but one life, you change the world entire. And that's, you know, we're not trying to move mountains. We're just trying to change a life or two and make it a little better.
When my dolly talked to me, I felt better because I had a friend that I could tell everything to. And it made my heart feel better.
Can you say, let's take it full frame with some excitement?
Yeah. Let's take it full frame with excitement. I made it funny. I did. See you later on Full Frame.
That's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. All of tonight's interviews can be found online at cctv-america.com. And let us know what you'd like us to take full frame next. Email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm Mike Walter in New York City. We'll see you next time.